When Maplewood Estates announced that the neighborhood would finally be getting its own community pool, the reaction was pure excitement. For years, residents had asked for an amenity that would bring people together, a place for families to gather in the summer, for kids to play safely without trekking across town, for neighbors to bond over barbecues and late afternoon swims. The dream of a pool had been dangled before, but this time the HOA board swore it was real. At the annual meeting, HOA President Linda Marsh stood proudly at the front of the clubhouse and declared, "This will be the crown jewel of Maplewood Estates, a modern pool facility with shaded seating, secure fencing, and room for every family to enjoy. Construction will be complete within 6 months." The room erupted with applause. For once, it felt like the board and the homeowners were on the same page. Everyone left the meeting buzzing with optimism, imagining the summer ahead. But what no one realized was that the pool project, the supposed crown jewel of Maplewood, would soon become a nightmare, and before long, the so-called pool that nobody could use would turn into one of the most bitter battles in the community's history. The promise to fund the project, the HOA board announced a temporary dues increase, an extra $75 a month per household. That was nearly $900 a year for each of the 200 homes in Maplewood. In total, the HOA had close to $180,000 a year in new revenue, more than enough to build the promised pool. Most people paid without complaint. They told themselves it was an investment. Parents reassured their kids that next summer, the pool would finally be there. Real estate agents even began advertising the upcoming community pool as a selling point. Soon, construction equipment arrived. The old tennis court was torn up, and a chain-link fence went up around the site. The ground was leveled, gravel delivered, rebar stacked nearby. For the first time, it felt real. But then, progress slowed. The pit. By midsummer, the ground was dug out, but no concrete had been poured. By fall, the hole was still there, a muddy crater collecting rainwater, surrounded by rusting metal. Winter came, and the pit froze over. When residents pressed the board for updates, the answers grew vague. Permits are delayed. There are supply chain issues. The contractor is behind schedule. Excuses piled up as fast as the invoices, but the pool never appeared. By the second summer, the construction site was nothing but a swamp. Mosquitoes bred in the stagnant water. The fence sagged. The warning signs faded. Children were warned not to go near it for fear of falling in. Yet the dues increase never went away. Families were still paying thousands of dollars toward the dream of a pool. That clearly wasn't coming. The first suspicions. At a heated HOA meeting, one father finally snapped. "We've paid thousands for this," he shouted, waving his latest dues bill. "And all we've got is a hole in the ground. Where's our money going?" Linda Marsh's smile didn't falter. "Large projects take time," she said smoothly. "The economy has been unpredictable. We are doing our best." But residents weren't convinced. They pressed for details. Who was the contractor? How much had been spent? Where were the invoices? Reluctantly, the board revealed the name of the construction company, a small firm nobody had ever heard of. A quick online search revealed the truth. The company had no history of pool construction. In fact, it had been incorporated only 2 years earlier, and its owner, David Marsh, Linda's cousin. The room erupted in outrage. "You gave our money to your family," someone shouted. "This is corruption," another yelled. Linda insisted it was all legal, that the contract had been competitively bid, but few believed her. The Accountability Committee. By year 3, frustration turned to action. A group of residents formed what they called the Accountability Committee. They were determined to get to the bottom of the mystery. They knocked on doors, compared notes, and demanded to see the HOA's financial records. But every request was met with stonewalling. The management company claimed the files were being audited, or that the treasurer was unavailable. Weeks stretched into months. Then, one resident, Allison, managed to get hold of a partial financial report through a friend at the management office. What she found was chilling. Buried in the records was an invoice, $50,000, paid to a company called Evergreen Solutions. The problem: Evergreen Solutions didn't exist. No website, no business registration, no trace of the company beyond that single invoice. "This isn't incompetence," Allison said grimly at a late-night committee meeting. "This is fraud." Retaliation. The committee began spreading the word. They printed flyers, shared updates online, and packed the next HOA meeting with angry residents. But the board fought back, hard. Almost overnight, committee members began receiving violation letters, One family was fined $250 for leaving a trash can out overnight. Another was charged $500 for a non-compliant mailbox. Allison herself was hit with a $1,000 fine for unauthorized alterations. After repainting her shutters, it was clear what was happening: retaliation. Across America, HOA boards have been known to weaponize the rulebook against dissent. Legal experts call it selective enforcement, a tactic where rules are applied harshly to critics, while allies are left alone. In Maplewood Estates, that tactic was now in full force, but instead of breaking the committee, the retaliation only made them more determined. The breaking point, the final straw, came one morning when a resident named Jacob walked past the construction site with his dog. Inside the fenced-off area, a small crew was working, but instead of building, they were tearing down, dismantling the framework, loading rebar into a truck, stripping away what little progress had been made. Jacob snapped photos and shared them with his neighbors. Within hours, the images spread through the community. They're dismantling it. They're scrapping the whole thing. Where is our money going? That night, dozens of furious residents gathered outside Linda Marsh's house. They waved their invoices in the air, shouting demands for answers. But Linda never came outside. The next morning, more violation letters appeared in mailboxes. The message was clear: challenge us, and we will crush you. The truth emerges. But behind closed doors, the committee had already uncovered more evidence. Bank statements suggested tens of thousands of dollars had been funneled into shell companies, Evergreen Solutions among them. Some of the payments appeared to trace back to accounts linked to Linda's relatives. The conclusion was unavoidable. The pool was never meant to be built. It had been a pretext, a way to raise dues and siphon money out of the neighborhood. The dream of Maplewood's crown jewel had been nothing but a scam. The revolt. Armed with their evidence, the accountability committee went public. They contacted local news stations, filed complaints with the state attorney general, and launched a recall petition against the HOA board. The story exploded. Headlines screamed, "Neighborhood pool project turns into $200,000 scam." HOA president accused of nepotism, fraud. Faced with mounting pressure, the board began to fracture. Two members resigned. Others claimed ignorance. Linda Marsh held on as long as she could, but the tide had turned. At a dramatic special meeting, residents voted overwhelmingly to recall the entire board. Cheers erupted as the results were announced. For the first time in years, the people of Maplewood Estates felt hope again. Aftermath. In the months that followed, lawsuits were filed. Investigators traced nearly $150,000 in misused funds, much of it funneled through bogus companies connected to Linda's family. Criminal charges were eventually brought against Linda and her cousin. The new HOA board vowed to rebuild trust. They froze dues, opened the books, and promised full transparency going forward. But the dream of the pool, that was gone. The swampy pit was eventually filled in, grass planted over it. Some neighbors said it was better that way, a reminder of what had happened. A scar, yes, but also a lesson, because in Maplewood Estates, the pool had never been about swimming. It had been about power, greed, and the dangers of an HOA left unchecked. And though the families never got the pool they were promised, they did get something else, a hard-won victory, and the knowledge that when neighbors stand together, even the most powerful HOA presidents can be brought down.